Alfie, tell us about Moblog. What is it?
Moblog is a mobile blogging site. By mobile blogging, I don't mean people blogging about mobile, but rather people blogging with their mobiles. And we started in 2003, so we've been around for an enormous amount of time. We were at the epicenter of things like the Buncefield explosion. We published the first images from the 7/7 attacks and things that really were very driven by the fact that mobiles were the only devices that were in some of these situations.
So you're almost like Twitter before Twitter was here in some ways, right?
Well, in the sense that sending a picture is a form of microblogging, in the sense you're not saying anything, the picture's saying everything for you. So yeah, in a way that's kind of true, and I've always felt that. But we started in 2003 because I was using at the time a competing service called Text America, which for reasons that will forever be clouded, I have absolutely no idea, they deleted my account. I was very, very angry because they literally just deleted it with nothing. And a couple of years I've been putting content up. So I asked some of my friends on a forum at the time called Arthur, which was an offshoot of beta.com, if anyone had a mail parser that they'd been looking at using for MMS, and I ran into Matt Brown, who had been working on something as a component to something that he was working on, and then we got together and we made Moblog. We watched Text America go down the tubes last year, which was a poignant moment.
Yep.
But that's kind of the genesis of Moblog, where it started from my vindictive nature, but also because Matt basically didn't want to spend 35 quid on a data cable to get his pictures off his phone onto his computer and up to the web via email. He wanted a nice mail route from his phone.
So you could almost say, just trivialising what Moblog's become now, you could almost say it's one of those classic ones where a couple of tech guys have a problem and they think, I'll make a solution for it. And it's like, oh my god, startup.
Yeah, exactly. At the time we didn't know what a startup was.
Right.
Not really. And in fact, in terms of our business model, it's fairly unique because we just didn't really know. We didn't think we were a startup. We never looked for funding. We were just two guys doing this thing. But then I thought, of course, about, quite early on in 2003, well, really, this is quite fun for a lot of different types of people. So we started working with Sony Ericsson, which then led to this product which we developed called the Promo Blog, which is essentially as a white-labeled mobile blogging microsite, which exists within and without Moblog. And as we've kind of progressed and the platform's gone through different iterations, we've got LBS-based stuff in there and smarter, more intelligent facilities.
Yeah, you were pretty early in the game as well as in the area of getting brands involved with blogging and other things. How did that all come about? And you've had some really interesting customers along the
I think the thing is that really came about through some very cool PR agencies that understood the value in experimenting with different technologies, and so we worked with. Well, it started with, what were they called? Brando World. Yeah, we did Sony Ericsson's account. So we did a bunch of really cool stuff with them. Some music-based stuff. And then we did a Moblog for Warp Records for Maximo Park, which demonstrated that the band on tour or a band on tour, you can't get them to do anything. But when it comes to actually maybe taking a photo every once in a while and then sending that up to the web, fairly easy. And they'll do it. At least one person in the band will do it. Which created this new form of, or maybe not particularly or entirely new, but brought to the fore the idea that you can document live a tour, anything happening as it was going on through media. So that was our first kind of foray into, well, how can we use this? So that's then led to us doing Moblogs for everyone from Beck to Girls Aloud to Just Jack or whatever. So it's definitely a big part of our thing. But it mainly came about through going to PR agencies and digital agencies and saying, hey, we've got this technology, why don't you come and play with us and try some stuff out?
So I know, obviously I know from your tweets and from chatting with you before, you're not just in the game for the money. You're in for good causes and things. I know you do quite a lot of voluntary things. There's been some interesting stuff on the Moblog side of things there as well, hasn't there? It's got some really good coverage recently.
Yeah, we did something really cool. Well, one thing in 2005, a friend of mine, Adam Stacey, was trapped, on the London Underground on King's Cross, which had been bombed, and he MMS'd me a picture of himself, covered in smoke. And then I published that on my Moblog, and it became before the Tavistock Square bus bombings, it was the first image to be published out of the event, 7/7 attacks in London, and became the iconic one. It was on the front pages of papers all over the world. Again, Creative Commons licensed, and just, massive.
Yeah.
But it became...
Credited back to Moblog, or...? to the original?
It was credited back to the original post in most cases, and to Adam as well. But it was just a really interesting shift because it helped to also define this emergence of what was called citizen journalism, which luckily has kind of lost a lot of its sway because I don't think, and no one does think that it's actually a good term.
I mean, there was a time not too long ago when all the newspapers were actually genuinely thinking that actually they're going to be just hiring citizen journalists all the time, and now we've seen that actually it's not quite like that.
But interestingly enough, it's actually the photojournalists that are really feeling the pinch.
Really, that's interesting. You would have expected that.
Oh well, if you take a look at the plethora of stock photo sites that then provide what would otherwise have been a professional level kind of, I'll go out and do a shoot for you, you can just get those stock images at $1.
Yeah.
So they have felt that impact. But anyway, so that led me to go and create We're Not Afraid, which was a kind of protest site which anyone could take part in, and was people holding up signs saying, "We're not afraid," which at the time I thought was just a really important thing to say when on both sides you had terrorists trying to make us afraid, but you also had our government saying, "You should be very afraid," and trying to keep that fear dollar going. So I was very pleased that mobile blogging and Moblog had allowed that to come about, because that was how it started. Mobloggers were all saying the same thing. But recently we did something called What is the Question, which was, so in our new platform iteration we've included mapping as an integral part of everyone's Moblog, because most handsets coming out in the high end now have got AGPS, location recording as standard. You just press yes, record my location. So we're handling that data and then plotting people's posts onto a map. And I came upon this idea, which is a little bit related to GPS drawing, which is to use map markers on Google Maps or any other online map to draw images. So
you actually go to the location and say, this is where I am, and that puts a point down, right?
Exactly. So this game that we created was for something called XDR TV, which is extensible drug-resistant tuberculosis, which was part of something that a photojournalist called James Nachtwey was doing as part of his TED Prize. And it was essentially, we had 43 objects, real-world objects, scattered around 2 square miles of London, which people were then given clues to go and find. So it was part augmented or alternate reality game, part mobile blogging, and part location-based game where people had to physically go somewhere. So each time they found one of these objects, instructions were there as to how they should upload it. And once they did, it then became part of this map, which ultimately was drawing the XDR TV logo over these 2 square miles of London. The center of that being the Department for Health. Yeah. So it was a really effective use of a whole bunch of converged technologies, which Moblog really well represents, both the mobile, the web, blogging, as well as mapping-based stuff. So it was a load of fun.
You got really good coverage as well. I mean, I actually saw it, unusually for me, when I see everything through Twitter, I actually saw it first on the BBC.
Yeah, it got good coverage. Because the thing is, Demos, who are a think tank here, came to us and were like, came to me because of We're Not Afraid, really. I'd worked with them at the time, and said, what can we do you think that's kind of viral, that we can do that's interesting? And I realized immediately that this idea of drawing on the map would cut through the clutter that new media has in NGO space, because these guys are using new media really effectively. They know how to do it. They're using community effectively, much more so than many brands, So I needed to find a way to kind of cut through that, and it did it well, and we got great coverage out of it.
In terms of a very simple metric, in terms of good causes per users ratio, you're pretty high. So is that the route that Moblog's going to continue in the future?
I think that we will always do ethical stuff. I mean, we do Moblogs for Greenpeace, Poppy Appeal, whatever. We will always do that kind of stuff. And I think that when it comes to charitable causes, people are much more engaged, and they want to be engaged, and mobile is a great way to do that, and it's media content generation ability. So we'll always do that. But for 2009, things are going to change. Things are changing massively in our industry and in this converged web mobile space. So we recognize that, and we're going to be changing quite a lot as an animal going into 2009. Our approach for how we look at getting new users and how we talk to other sites via API and stuff is going to change. So I'm really looking forward to what happens in 2009, actually.
Excellent. Well, great stuff. Thanks for talking to us.
Thanks,
I look forward to it.